We are. Look, I don't really like the term woke. That said, our primary purpose is to entertain. And where we can entertain responsibly, obviously, we try to do that. We try to have a positive impact on the world.
When people say woke, what they really mean is they're describing a worldview that hates you, that hates everything America stands for.
As CEO, it is my responsibility to address the criticism related to our latest feature, Snow White.
So Disney is another company that's been in hot water. They've been in a downward spiral.
Bob Iger went completely quiet that night, the kind of silence that cuts through the noise like a record scratch. Disney had just issued a public apology, and it sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. The statement, circulated to every major outlet, admitted point blank that the live-action Snow White failed to capture the magic, emotion, and timeless essence that fans expect from a Disney classic. It was a rare moment of corporate honesty from a company famous for its glossy, picture-perfect image. Wall Street raised eyebrows. Social media exploded. Critics were stunned, trying to piece together how the so-called master of fairy tales dropped the ball this hard. But those in the inner circle, they saw it coming. Insiders whispered that even in early script readings, something felt off. The plot felt aimless, bogged down by clashing tones and mixed signals from marketing execs, merchandise teams, and cultural consultants. Despite that, longtime Disney producers clung to their legacy like it was a shield, convinced that the brand's reputation would smooth over any issues. That illusion shattered when reshoots dragged on into the winter, forcing the cast and crew back into freezing, hastily rebuilt forest sets on sound stages. Each rewrite tried to solve a new problem. Too traditional, then not traditional enough. Too bold, then somehow still too safe. It was a swirl of contradictions. Editors worked overtime to stitch things together, but nothing clicked. Everything fell apart after the disastrous test screenings. Viewers walked away confused, complaining about uneven pacing, jarring emotional beats, and a tone that shifted like a spinning top. Normally, Disney would quietly clean up the chaos behind the scenes. Not this time. Leaks started pouring out, faster than the studio could plug them. Fans, reviewers, and podcasters lit up the internet with stories from the troubled set. Twitter caught fire with budget drama. TikTok creators posted parodies, lip-syncing awkward moments from the film while claiming test audiences were laughing at scenes meant to be heartfelt. Each new leak brought fresh drama, dominating headlines. Suddenly, everyone was talking about Disney's magic starting to fade. Then came the spotlight on Snow White star Rachel Zegler. Confident and outspoken, she proudly defended the film's modern reimagining, calling this version brave and reflective of today's world. Supporters praised her authenticity, but critics zeroed in on her words, claiming Disney had turned a beloved tale into a lecture. Her panel appearances were chopped, remixed, and turned into viral clips, setting off even more controversy. The media, hungry for division, jumped at the chance to polarize. Rachel Zegler quickly became either a fearless voice for change or, according to some, the face of Disney's missteps. Amid the frenzy, a wild, baseless rumor took off that Zegler had been briefly detained following a backstage altercation. No proof, no police report, no reliable witness, nothing concrete. Still, the internet ran with it. Fake screenshots, endless reposts. It was the kind of gossip too juicy to ignore, and just believable enough to spread like wildfire. The hashtag #Snow White scandal started trending globally, completely overshadowing the film's official promos. Even after both Disney and Zegler's reps issued firm denials, the public wasn't letting it go. The rumor felt like the perfect storm, a cursed production spinning completely out of control. By midweek, Disney's internal crisis system was lighting up with red flags from every direction. The chaos wasn't slowing down, it was only gaining momentum. Brand trust with families took a serious hit. Boycott hashtags started trending across social media, and major YouTubers jumped in with lengthy breakdowns of every plot mistake, glitch, and inconsistency they could find. Boardroom conversations that once centered on box office numbers now revolved entirely around saving Disney's reputation. In stepped Bob Iger himself. Emergency meetings were called late into the night, with legal teams, PR experts, finance heads, and top creatives all getting involved. The question on everyone's mind: could they still salvage the movie, or was pulling the plug and taking the loss better for Disney's long-term health? The tipping point came when an internal report went public. It compared audience reactions to Snow White with how people had responded to other recent remakes. In 2019, The Lion King took some heat from critics, but people still flocked to see it, drawn in by the stunning visuals. Mulan, 2020, narrowly avoided disaster by showing cultural respect, even if its box office numbers were off. But Snow White was a different story. It had the biggest drop in trust Disney had ever recorded. The internal summary was harsh. Potential earnings were offset by the serious damage to the brand's reputation. The report recommended that Disney consider a strategic withdrawal. Faced with this, the executives made a game-changing decision: issue a full apology and halt all future live-action remakes. Writing that apology was no easy task. It had to feel genuine, but not weak, humble without surrendering control. Every word had to be perfect, as it could either save or destroy the company's legacy. Disney's apology was carefully crafted. They admitted that some of their creative choices had distracted from the true heart of a story beloved for generations. They thanked fans for their honest feedback and promised to reevaluate how they could better respect the legacy they had built. No one was blamed, no finger-pointing. Instead, they took collective responsibility, emphasizing that storytelling is a group effort, and sometimes even the best teams miss the mark. When the apology dropped, the usual hustle of Burbank came to an unexpected halt. Studio employees, walking out of their offices with coffee in hand, couldn't help but stare at their phones as headlines flashed across digital signs. Some were relieved, but many others seemed rattled, wondering how this scandal might affect future projects still in early development. Within hours, managers overseeing upcoming reboots like The Hunchback of Notre Dame were scrambling to reassess. Even a rumored Atlantis remake was hit with a stop-work memo. Designers, writers, and other creatives who had spent months working on these projects were now in limbo. It felt eerily like déjà vu, but this time, it wasn't a strike or a pandemic shutting things down. It was public backlash. Online, reactions were split. Hardcore fans of the original classics celebrated, arguing that these stories should be left untouched. Meanwhile, others, more in tune with the modern times, expressed frustration, calling it a missed opportunity to update these tales for today's audience. In the middle, a quieter group hoped that Disney would use this moment to start fresh, creating new worlds instead of rehashing old ones. But no matter where people stood, one theme stood clear: respect. What stood out in Disney's response was that they didn't try to dodge the issue or hide behind typical PR spin. In a world where companies often sweep problems under the rug, this apology felt, if not heroic, at least refreshingly genuine. Still, this statement sparked plenty of questions. What would this reevaluation actually look like? Analysts predicted 3 big moves were on the horizon. First, better audience testing. Not just at the end of production, but from the beginning. Disney would bring in focus groups early on to test how far a remake could stretch without losing its essence. Second, a return to original stories in theaters, new worlds that didn't rely on nostalgia. Finally, a push for mid-budget animated films, channeling that 90s Disney magic without risking direct comparison to the classics. Rival studios were quick to take notice. Some reboot plans were quietly scrapped, while others went back to the drawing board, rewriting scripts to make sure they respected the source material. This wasn't just limited to fairy tales. Executives everywhere started to ask, are audiences finally tired of constant reboots, superhero spin-offs, and legacy sequels? Disney's stumble proved one thing: even the biggest brand in Hollywood can fall from grace. Amid the chaos, Rachel Zegler finally spoke up with a calm and thoughtful video, just her in front of a plain backdrop. No flashy edits, just her steady voice. The tone was different from her previous fiery remarks. This time, she thanked everyone who watched the film, even those who had criticized it. She admitted that true art should spark conversation, not just controversy. She presented herself as a guardian of a cherished role, emphasizing that truly honoring beloved characters means knowing when to step aside and listen carefully. This shift in tone earned her some much-needed respect. However, not everyone was convinced. Critics argued that this apology should have come much sooner, and in their eyes, it was a case of too little, too late. Meanwhile, director Greta Gerwig kept a low profile throughout the storm. Industry insiders said she stuck to her contractual obligations, trying to maintain a steady vision while navigating an ocean of conflicting studio notes. Those closest to her revealed that she felt disappointed, but not defeated. viewing this experience as a harsh lesson on what happens when personal vision is undermined by too many outside influences. For someone who's used to creating intimate, emotionally rich films, steering a massive franchise like Snow White was an entirely different beast, one that demanded compromises at every turn, ultimately weakening the whole project. Whether Gerwig will return to a major studio film after this remains uncertain, but many industry insiders believe this saga sends a clear message. Directors need space to lead with one unified vision, not be forced to juggle conflicting directives. This incident is already becoming a case study in film schools, joining the ranks of Hollywood missteps like Heaven's Gate and John Carter. These are all examples of huge budgets, sky-high expectations, and shaky public perception crashing together in spectacular fashion. Future film students will study how algorithm-driven marketing foreshadowed problems months before the release, how rumors gained momentum in online echo chambers, and how large studios failed to adapt their old-school playbooks for today's hyper-connected online audiences. In the real world, Disney's theme parks scrambled to distance themselves from the film as quickly as possible. Holiday campaigns tied to the remake were quietly pulled, and merchandise featuring the new branding was rerouted to storage. Creative teams at the parks raced to replace any references to the new version of Snow White with tributes to the original 1937 classic. Meanwhile, PR teams worked overtime to maintain the brand's magical image, even if that meant pretending the whole debacle never happened. Cast members at the parks were discreetly trained on how to handle guests' questions, offering polished responses. The core message: Disney still stands for wonder and inclusion, no matter what's happening online. Behind the scenes, the parks remained Disney's heartbeat, and keeping visitors happy was crucial. If the park experience began to sour, the damage would reach far beyond just one film. Freezing all those live-action remakes didn't come without a financial cost. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue when factoring in sunk costs, contracts, and supplier fees. But the company's financial experts insisted it was worth it. Protecting family and fan goodwill was invaluable. Executives feared that another failed remake could alienate their loyal audiences for good. So, stopping the production process now was a smart move to preserve Disney's long-term magic. Meanwhile, away from the chaos, young animators at Disney's Burbank campus gathered after hours, speculating on what the future would bring. Some were hopeful that the studio would greenlight more experimental projects, stories told from fresh, diverse perspectives. Others dreamed of a comeback for hand-drawn animation, blending the classic style with modern technology. The mood wasn't one of panic, it was a hunger for originality, a desire to break free from the familiar formulaic loop and actually surprise audiences once again. Culture critics and film commentators quickly jumped on Disney's apology, seeing it as a sign that major studios must approach remaking classics with more care. One columnist used a brilliant metaphor, likening old stories to heirloom jewelry. You can polish or reshape them, but if you replace the core elements entirely, you lose their emotional value. Another writer countered, arguing, stories stay alive only when each generation puts its own stamp on them. Even Shakespeare reimagined folktales. The debate between preserving tradition and pushing for progress isn't something that needs fixing. It's an ongoing conversation that never truly ends. As for Snow White, Disney still plans to release it, but without the usual fanfare. The massive marketing push has been toned down significantly. Now, the focus is on showcasing stunning visuals and sweeping orchestral music to capture that classic Disney elegance, while quietly stepping around the drama. Instead of promoting it as a bold reinvention, sources say Disney is testing the waters with limited international releases before making a bigger move in the US. If the film underperforms overseas, it will likely be quietly dropped onto streaming platforms, where niche audiences sometimes embrace films with flaws but unique qualities. We've seen stranger comebacks in film history, but any chance for redemption depends on whether audiences approach it with an open mind, rather than writing it off before they even give it a chance. After the apology, the internet did what it does best. Fans started creating mashups, blending the soft, classic charm of the original Snow White with dramatic stills from the live-action trailer. Some of it was pure nostalgia, while others took a more sarcastic approach, calling it the apology heard round the kingdom. It was funny, strange, and most importantly, it showed how deeply fans love engaging with the story. The memes didn't just mock the situation, They turned it into a shared experience, a fandom in motion. This is the new reality Disney has to navigate, where audiences remix your mistakes into digital folklore. The real challenge now is channeling that creative energy into something welcoming, not alienating. Park historians quickly pointed out that Walt Disney's original philosophy was rooted in adaptation. He believed storytelling was about tapping into universal emotions, but he also cautioned against chasing fleeting trends for the sake of relevance. His style focused on timeless emotions, not adding superficial flourishes that would soon lose their impact. Disney's decision to hit pause on the live-action remakes might actually be a smart reset. It's not about abandoning progress, but refocusing on what matters. Heartfelt storytelling first, innovation second, and flashy spectacle last. Whether this new mindset will stick around depends on how things play out when the buzz fades and investors start asking about the money left on the table from all the halted reboots. Outside the Disney bubble, Snow White's stumble is making waves. Independent filmmakers who've long argued that Hollywood leans too heavily on safe bets see this as proof that studios need to stop relying so much on old intellectual properties and start taking real risks. In fact, this whole mess might even benefit smaller films. Film festivals and streaming platforms could begin attracting viewers who crave something fresh and free from the formulaic franchise trap. New voices, unshackled by nostalgia, are beginning to rise. In a strange twist, Disney's public fall from grace might actually be opening the door for a creative renaissance outside its empire. Weeks after the apology, chatter about supply chain shifts indicated a surge in licensing requests for books, comics, and games centered on brand new fairy tales. Publishers saw a clear opportunity. With Disney stepping back, there's now space to introduce fresh legends to a hungry audience. Even school theater programs began reaching out to Disney's stage division, asking for more creative freedom to put their own whimsical spin on classic tales. Less pressure, more room to experiment. Talks are still sensitive, but the trend is clear. When the giant slows down, the rest of the creative world moves in, ready to tell bold new stories. For the families who grew up chanting "Mirror, mirror on the wall," the apology struck a chord in different ways. Some parents, tired of endless online debates, were relieved that Disney chose to pause and reflect instead of stubbornly pushing forward. Others worried that their children might miss out on the magic of seeing modernized role models in those big-screen fantasy films. And just like that, dinner table discussions began to heat up about what makes a story timeless, how tales evolve, and whether retelling them weakens or strengthens their impact. In an unexpected way, Disney sparked a real intergenerational conversation. Amid all the chaos, there's a silver lining. Media ethics experts quickly seized on Disney's apology, dissecting the language used. They pointed out how the company carefully navigated the fine line between expressing regret and avoiding any legal repercussions. The phrase, "creative choices that distracted from the heart of a tale," especially caught attention, praised as a masterclass in corporate speak. Gentle enough to dodge blame, yet sincere enough to feel genuine. By acknowledging the emotional fallout without outright admitting any harm, Disney may have created a new blueprint for handling backlash over creative missteps. While experts will debate whether it's true accountability or just savvy PR, even the critics had to admit it was polished. Soon after, attention shifted to what Disney has in store next. With the remake slots now vacant, rumors began circulating. Whispers hinted at an animated epic set on a magical island chain where music fuels the world and a live-action adventure starring a bold, space-exploring woman navigating uncharted galaxies. No more reboots. This time, they're rumored to be creating entirely new stories. Both of these potential projects signal a major departure from Disney's typical fairy tale fare, suggesting that the company is ready to prove it can still create original magic. Leaks of early concept art fueled a quiet excitement, indicating that despite all the drama, people still want to believe in Disney's ability to captivate audiences. Financial analysts are bracing for a rocky road ahead, but they anticipate a slow recovery. A major hit in the next wave of projects could turn everything around. For the creative teams behind these films, the animators, composers, and everyone working behind the scenes, a single win means more than just positive press. It's a lifeline that keeps jobs and careers moving forward. The race is now on to turn this recalibration into tangible projects, as the pressure is high to deliver before the momentum stalls completely. As for Bob Iger, his apology has cemented a key moment in his legacy. It was the point where he stood up to the storm and chose honesty over deflection. While some say he didn't have much of a choice, others praise him for stepping up and prioritizing people over corporate defense. In an era when trust can shatter overnight, how this bold move is remembered depends on what happens next. But by acknowledging Disney's missteps instead of denying them, Iger has set himself apart from the usual corporate playbook. When entertainment recaps are written at the end of the year, this moment, the Snow White apology, will be a defining one. It's the point where Disney admitted that even the most established legacy studios can falter. It may even become shorthand for a larger shift in the industry, moving away from nostalgic reboots and towards crafting fresh, new myths. Whether this shift sticks or not is anyone's guess, as trends have a tendency to swing unpredictably. But one thing is certain: the image of a major studio pausing, listening, and course-correcting will remain in people's minds. Creators, executives, and fans alike won't forget that moment. And perhaps, just maybe, that's the silver lining here. Storytelling flourishes when there's a genuine exchange between the creators and their audience. It's not always clean, but it is powerful. If Disney takes these lessons and channels them into building new worlds that speak to today's hearts while retaining that timeless magic, this whole mess could turn out to be the beginning of something extraordinary. Picture this: one animator, late at night, sitting alone at her desk. The glow of a desk lamp illuminates an open sketchbook. She flips past old drawings of dwarfs and castles, stopping on a blank page. Slowly she starts to sketch, shapes not of apples or thrones, but of wild towers and creatures unlike anything we've seen before. Deep within that studio, the silence of regret has transformed into the scratch of a pencil on paper, a soft promise that new stories are on their way, with fresh roots, heart, and wonder. If you've made it this far, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment with your thoughts. See you in the next one, where the drama never stops and the stories just keep getting wilder.